Welcome back. It's Jake with North Georgia Life Podcast. I apologize for the year 2025. I don't want to be whiny, but 2025 was a lot. Things in life and business in all kinds of different avenues were just a lot. And so part of the tail end, good grief, the second half of the year was just not as planned. And don't really have any good explanation or excuses for you other than to say I'm sorry. And 2026 is going to make up for it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. The first 6 episodes we already have recorded. They are in the editing process. Really, really good food. If you're a foodie, just you're welcome. Really good food. Really good food. And if you're looking for fun stuff to do, oh my gosh. I don't know exactly when we're going to release it, but just good for the soul. Good for the soul. If you had a hard year, if you're going through hard stuff in life, you just need to subscribe to the podcast, listen, and then just go everywhere that I'm telling you to go in the podcast for this year. And you will just have a better life. Your soul will breathe some fresh air. You will get some life and some joy and some vigor and all of that stuff. Holden Oversoul. So we are at Holden Oversoul in Demorest, Georgia today. It is located at 546 Georgia Street in Demorest. Regardless of where you're at, the drive to Demorest is just very easy, pretty much peaceful no matter which way you're coming from. And I had 2 people in the last year the chef of Holden Oversoul was one of the owners and one of the chefs at one of our favorite restaurants ever. And that restaurant closed or dissolved or whatever. And I just love good food. And I was devastated. When we go out to eat, we're at that place in life where it's either as cheap as possible or I don't care what the bill is. It's only one of the two. It's like street tacos and, we're getting out of there for $15, or it's just this is what we have date money for. This is what the cash in the envelope in the safe is for. It's one of those two things. And so that restaurant was one of our fancy places that we loved going to. And when it closed, I was devastated. And then it was a year or so before I found out that the person we have on the podcast today was one of the owners and one of the head chefs for that restaurant who started his own thing. And when I figured that out, I told Amber, I was like, we're going to drive to Demorest just to eat at this restaurant. And we did. And it was amazing. We actually ran into some friends of ours that were there. And I'm like, how did you know about this place? Because they weren't from there either. They were like, how did you know about this place? I'm like, we told them the story. Anyway, such good food. And I think I mentioned on the podcast, regardless of who you think you are or who you think you aren't, it's just a great way for small local business, for any local business. Don't discount the power of a Google review when people are trying to, grow their business, gain exposure, gain an audience, anything we can do. That's why we do the podcast. It is strictly to try and help local small businesses, the people who make our community, the nonprofits, the destination places, to help them get exposure to you, and so that you'll come get exposed to them and just fall more in love and support the businesses that make our community in our part of the country amazing. And I got an email. This was my cattle prod of God, I need to get on it and reach out to this restaurant. So when we ate there in the fall, I took our food was amazing. I took a couple pictures, which I don't. My wife's the one that takes pictures of food, not me. But I'm like, this is just great. Is very. For as good as it was, very reasonably priced. And so we took a couple pictures. Didn't really think anything of it. Put a review on Google, and I got an email a couple months before. So it was about a month or so before we recorded the podcast that my Google review had 20,000 views. And it was I wrote a small paragraph, nothing fancy, a couple pictures, maybe like maybe 2 pictures, and that got 20,000 views for a small local restaurant that is, fairly new. Just one of those things that how many people are going to connect with something simple like that? They're going to bring them to a place maybe they've never been or they're exploring, and just every new customer helps support small local businesses. So when you're out and about and you just, have some time to kill, something simple like that can get 20,000 people to look at it, pay attention, and who knows how many customers come in there for the first time. And now this is a mark on their map in terms of great places to eat in the North Georgia area. So that's enough yapping from me, and I apologize for my apology being longer than I expected, but such is life. Hope you enjoy the episode, and look out 2026. Welcome back to the North Georgia Life Podcast. It's Jake, your host. Today we are at what will probably be a destination, if you don't already know about it, for local North Georgia fine dining and just like good food. We are at Holden Oversoul in Demorest, Georgia. If you're not familiar with the Demorest area, it's a beautiful drive no matter where you're coming from or where you're going. So you can't go wrong there. But if you're a foodie kind of person or you just want a really good meal, we love Holden Oversoul. So we're with Jamie Allred. Jamie is the owner, operator, chef, just kind of all things Holden Oversoul. And thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
So let's start with you. I know a little bit of your backstory, but I don't know your way back story. So are you a Georgia native? Where'd you grow up?
I'm originally from Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Okay.
Pretty much born and raised there all the way through high school. After about graduation in 94, I took off to Boone, North Carolina. Me and my family always traveled to the mountains in the summertime when school was away. I also worked on my grandparents' farm a lot growing up through high school. So that's kind of where I got the farm-to-table mentality of growing food and bringing it to a restaurant. I ended up in Boone at Appalachian State University. There, I kind of went for accounting, continued my accounting degree for the next 3 years. My dad was an accountant. At that point, I decided that sitting behind a desk every day really wasn't for me. So that's when I kind of took my first actual restaurant job as a dishwasher in Blowing Rock, North Carolina.
So you started as a dishwasher.
Yes, sir.
Low man on the totem pole.
Yeah. I highly recommend anybody looking to get in the restaurant industry to start as a dishwasher first and kind of see how that experience is and kind of work your way up from that.
Yeah. We told our older kids when they were growing up that everybody, and they did as well, everybody should work in food service when they're young so that you can appreciate. If you've never worked in a restaurant, even if it's a fast food restaurant or whatever, it gives you a different level of compassion and understanding and gratitude. I remember when things started opening back up after COVID, I just remember going to restaurants and just thanking the waitress, like, thank you for being here so that I don't have to cook. I'm tired of doing my own dishes, and just for the simple things of people showing up and doing, stuff like that. I think it's so important for everybody at some point to work somewhere around the restaurant industry. So because we all eat out at some point. We all go to restaurants.
That's one thing everybody has in common is food, eating. So like some people say, that's the way to some people's hearts, but it's a hard industry to be in, but it's also rewarding at the same time.
So how did you go from, I got to imagine you're relatively okay with math or you wouldn't have pursued accounting to begin with. How did you go from that to going into the restaurant industry as like, I'm actually going to do this as a career?
So growing up, my mom was a home economics teacher. So every week, she'd come home and kind of teach me whatever she was kind of teaching her class at that time, whether it was sewing a duffel bag or cooking eggs or making a quiche or whatnot. So basically on the weekends and summertime, we would cook together and eat together and kind of share our thoughts on cooking. And I kind of carried through my life. Even in college, when I was living with roommates, I always kind of prepared the couple meals a week for my roommates. Math-wise, I was always great in math in school. My SAT scores were higher in math, definitely, than my other scores. So that's kind of how I went into accounting. From that, like I said earlier, after those 3 years, I just didn't want to sit behind a desk anymore. The math part definitely helps me now with conversion of recipes and putting recipes together, measuring things, and A lot of baking things are done by formulas. So when I did actually start as a dishwasher, eventually I kind of worked my way up to the line after probably 8 or 9 months. Worked the line for about a year or so, and the chef there kind of recommended me to go to culinary school. He saw something in me that think I could probably have a career out of it. So I was like, cool, that's good. I'd like to, I need some kind of path in life. And I loved working at the resort at the time in Blowing Rock. So I did a little research back then in 1996, 97. There was only 2 culinary schools basically in North Carolina. That was in Greensboro, North Carolina, and Asheville, North Carolina. And growing up in the mountains, vacation in the mountains, living in Boone and living in Blowing Rock, I was like, hey, Asheville's got the mountains. So I like mountain towns, so I chose Asheville. Went there for 2 years, kind of worked part-time in restaurants in Asheville and Waynesville, North Carolina. Completed my 2-year program. Went to the Ritz-Carlton in Amelia Island, Florida, and worked there for about a year. Got all that underneath my belt. It was kind of as an externship, I guess. And then from there, I came back and interviewed with some chefs in Charlotte and actually Atlanta as well, and chose to go to Charlotte for Myers Park Country Club and work for an outstanding chef there. And kind of first couple of years in Charlotte, kind of learned a lot from him. You learn a lot in culinary school, but also you learn a lot of experience in the restaurant. And he kind of took me under his wing and kind of showed me a lot of things that I hadn't learned in culinary school and my little quick stint at the Ritz-Carlton.
So you were in Florida at that time?
Yes, sir.
And then when did you come to Georgia?
Probably 15, 16 years ago. Throughout my culinary career, I worked in Charlotte. I worked in and out of Asheville. I kept wanting to go back to Asheville. And then after about 10 years in Asheville, I decided I kind of wanted to get out of Asheville. It was kind of growing and wasn't quite the small town atmosphere that I remember Asheville being when I was in culinary school and actually working there for off and on for 10 years. So I found a great job. I started looking online, and there's a job opening at Lake Raven Hotel. So I decided to interview for that job. At that time, she was interviewing another great chef out of Charleston. I ended up turning down a job, and she hired the guy from Charleston. And then after another year, after he was there for a year, and I stayed in Asheville for another year, she kind of had an ad out again for the chef position. So I reapplied, came down here, loved the area. North Georgia mountains are fantastic. Tons of great things to do here.
For your restaurant, let's kind of move into what you are and what you do here. One, I know the server that we had the first time we came told us the short story of where the name came from. But for anybody who doesn't,
kind of started back in my first year at working kitchens, where I started as a dishwasher in Blowing Rock. I believe it was 1996. I had a server there. Was really into this band called Widespread Panic. So eventually they went on tour. Well, they started playing in 88, actually, in Athens, Georgia. I think about 96 or 97, we ended up headed to Myrtle. She invited me to go down to Myrtle Beach with her to see Widespread Panic at the House of Blues down there. I'd listened to them a little bit just from us hanging out outside of work a little bit. And then I kind of went to the first live show, and I just fell in love. I mean, the concept of their music, the crowd, the energy of the crowd, the lyrics of their music, totally different and set different in my soul. Holden Oversoul is my favorite song. I've kind of been seeing them since 96 all the way up till now. I went down and saw them a couple months ago at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. So it's kind of where Holden Oversoul is my favorite song, Widespread Panic song. Initially started as after I left Fortify. I had a little small catering company and a food truck, and I actually took some of my assets from selling my 50% share of Fortify and bought some property up in Cornelia and started a farm growing pigs and actual produce. So my goal was to kind of see the different aspects of raising a restaurant through livestock and through the actual vegetables used in the restaurants. So I named my farm Holden Oversoul just after the song. So that's kind of the extension of the farm is the restaurant. When we first opened, I still had the farm. I was growing pigs still, growing produce, had 18 acres. After about 3 or 4 months of the restaurant being open, I was like, I can't do both no more. I was spending 12, 13 hours at the restaurant, a couple hours a day on the farm, and just decided to sell the farm and bought a smaller piece of property right down the road, about 6 acres. So I don't have to worry about bush hogging anymore on my days off, feeding animals anymore. But I do hope to start providing the restaurant with vegetables probably this spring and summer. I'm working on some raised beds and some stuff now on that property. So that's the name, kind of where the Holden Oversoul came from. The lead singer, John Bell, actually has a little place here in Clarksville and Highlands, and he's been here once or twice. So it's great to kind of see a full circle moment for me to know that I've been over probably 200 Panic shows and actually see the lead singer come in here and eat my food and take a moment and actually talk to me was a real good full circle moment for me with the widespread panic tied to my theme of my restaurant.
Yeah, that's cool. Talk to us about your menu and just kind of where because you have a different menu. It's why we love Fortify. It's why we love coming here, because you have some maybe spin on some traditional things, but then you have other things that you're not going to find that are very unique, and just kind of take us through really anything you want to highlight on the menu.
So originally I wanted to do kind of something different in the area. I looked at a couple restaurants, or not restaurants, so to speak, but couple areas in Cornelia and Demorest and Clarksville, put a restaurant out. I wanted to bring something to this part of North Georgia that we don't have. I mean, I've had, oysters on the menu at previous restaurants. So I wanted to bring an oyster bar to this area in North Georgia, and also still tap into my roots of being a farm-to-table restaurant. As I mentioned earlier, I kind of sold the farm about a year ago, but I still deal with a lot of local farms. I source local beef from Clarksville, Georgia at Texas. And I didn't want to get tied into just doing oysters and seafood and a couple of things like that. I do what I love. So some people are like, what kind of restaurant are you? Are you like oyster bar? Are you a farm-to-table restaurant? Are you fine dining? At times I just kind of tell them I just do what I like to do. I mean, it's fortunate enough to be in this business and to have a job that, you kind of love to come into every day. It gives me a way to have my artistic expression through food. So I kind of experiment with all kinds of different cuisines or genres of food, I guess you could say. We get all our seafood shipped in 3 days a week. Our oysters come in 3 days a week. My local beef comes in once a week. We've now started doing pizza. We have a pizza truck. We ended up opening an actual Fortify pie, actually beside Fortify. So I had an actual chance to, once they closed or sold, I should say, to actually go in there and actually buy the old pizza oven that me and my business partner kind of sourced out and kind of went and experimented with a different pizza oven. So I had that disassembled, had the guys from New York come down from New York to disassemble the pizza oven, take it to Dawsonville for me, and the place in Dawsonville actually built a food trailer kind of around the pizza oven. So now we have a pizza oven on site. So we do pizza, steaks, pastas, seafood, kind of you name it. We kind of do specials throughout the week. Monday, it's pizza night, 25% off. Tuesdays, we kind of bring the fish camp flair into Demorest. We do fried catfish, fried shrimp, popcorn shrimp, crab cakes, it's all served on a platter in addition to our regular menu. Wednesdays, we have bang bang night. Thursdays, we do a low country boil and crab leg night. And Fridays, we kind of alternate between prime rib and a local source boneless short ribs, which we actually smoke and then braise. And then Friday and Saturday, we bring in a fresh catch of the week. So for our first 6 or 7 months of being open, we kind of didn't do the daily specials. And then I was like, man, we got to get somebody in here that, they don't want to come in here and eat oysters 4 times a week. What can I do to bring somebody in here 3-4 times a week? So we kind of offer a little something different and additional to our regular menu throughout the week. So it kind of brings back a lot of our regulars come, for special nights, and then they also come other nights for oysters. It takes a lot of work, creativity. My kitchen staff always has something new to prep, so we kind of never get into a funk as you kind of get into sometimes working in kitchens. So I think all around it's really increased business here and actually brings, a different atmosphere on every day of the week.
What's something over the next few years you'd like to see grow or add to your operation?
So hopefully by next spring, next winter, the post office right next door to us will be moving up the street to the City Hall building. All that's still in the works, planning stages, construction stages, a lot of things to still work out there. But I approached the city. I have a first right of refusal for my lease of that building. And I do plan on moving, or not moving, but extending Holden Oversoul into that building. I have a couple plans in the work for that, and I've already approached the city with those. And we're kind of working from that aspect and waiting on the post office and the city to get their construction done and get moved up the road. So hopefully by next spring, we'll have something in store for that.
If they say no, I'm going to chain myself to the building.
Sounds good. I'll be there right with you.
They need to. You just need to cater that planning lunch.
But one thing about Fortify, as you mentioned earlier, I mean, one thing that me and my business partner at the time wanted to bring to Clayton is a fine dining restaurant. And some people were like, "Are you crazy? Downtown Clayton?" Mm-hmm. You know, that was 13, 12 years ago. There was nothing in downtown Clayton to even resemble a fine dining restaurant. So that's one thing I think back then Fortify actually brought to the Clayton area is the actual food scene that it has now. And that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to bring it to Demorest is that, you know, I want to put Demorest on the map, kind of how I put Clayton on the map. The city's been real great with me, working with me with the restaurant. And I want to make, you know, Demorest as a destination, like kind of like Clayton became. So, you know, we now have Bangkok Bistro open up across the street a couple weeks ago. We've got a nice coffee shop right across the street as well. We've got Piedmont University's museum right across the street. And hopefully with the post office expansion, we will continue to make Demorest a destination for people to come visit when they come to the North Georgia mountains.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, observation / instruction of, if you're listening to this and you're in an area where your downtown area is not what you want it to be, and there's several of those that immediately pop to my mind that I know of, the restaurant scene is the linchpin to getting growth. I mean, I remember like years ago when I first moved here, Gainesville is a great example. Like the downtown square of Gainesville was like, I remember the first time I went to the downtown square thinking, do you not understand? You've got these accountants. You've got none of it was foot traffic. It was very, very sparse in terms of restaurants. And you look at the square now, and I don't know what the percentage is, but it's the vast majority of everything that's walkable in the Gainesville Square and the surrounding, kind of side streets. They're restaurants, and they're good restaurants. And that's that fuels growth, I think, easier and better than anything, because of exactly what you said is it becomes a destination. I'm glad that you're here. And I do remember Clayton when Clayton was, you walk down the downtown strip in 15 minutes because there just wasn't a whole lot there. And now it's like, good luck trying to do that. Some of the other things you're involved with just in terms of community, any sort of catering, any things that you guys want to talk about?
Just through my restaurant years, I've even started in Asheville where I kind of volunteered for food banks and whatnot. And even in Clayton, I was on the advisory board of the North Georgia Food Bank and did a lot of things with farm to school classes. I did some work with Georgia Organics, teaching cafeteria workers how to make items with fresh vegetables that they really haven't ever worked with, teaching kids how to eat more healthier, like through roasted okra over like a fried okra, and a lot of kids have never had okra. So coming to Demorest, I wanted to kind of continue a little bit of that aspect of things. We do kind of 4 to 5 fundraisers every year. We just completed one 2 weeks ago for the United Way of Habersham County. We raised over $3,700, I believe, after it was all said and done. Our next fundraiser is actually for the Friends of the Arts program at Piedmont University, FOTA. We did a fundraiser for them last year where students actually made ceramics for our plating, for our food to be served on, and customers were able to take home some of the platters and some of the goblets. So this year we're doing one, I believe, across the street actually in the museum instead of here, one of the last Saturdays in April. They will once again be making goblets for the customers to take home. We'll be serving wine and beer in. Also, the bowls, we're doing a Brunswick stew, a local chicken Brunswick stew from Springer Mountain Farms, and also a barbecue black bean stew for the vegetarians. So that money will go to the Friends of the Art program at Piedmont University, SRWA fundraiser for the Sequoia River Watershed Association. We're doing that same week, actually. That would take place at Piedmont University, where I believe 50 restaurants and coffee shops and businesses around the area will participate in to kind of raise money to help them clean up the Sequoia River. We're doing a fundraiser in June for the Clarksville Library for the KID program. In October, we did a Relay for Life last year. In November, we're doing it this year in October, where actually Demorest Springs Park hosts the Relay for Life. And we're doing a fundraiser that week. And then at the end of the year, we're going to finish it off with the Cops Shopping for Kids for Habersham County and Demorest, where all the money will go to the program to buy Christmas gifts for local kids. So we do all these fundraisers, kind of keep the money in our community. Way to people's hearts is food and eating. So we do a good job of that, and I'm glad to see people happy when they leave here and actually return for another visit.
If you could go back in your journey, is there a piece of advice you were given? Is there something you picked up from that first restaurant chef that kind of took you under the wing and showed you some things after culinary that you just kind of go back to as like, that was just a great nugget of wisdom or whatever along the way? That
I think what's most helped me is my experience working for these different chefs, different restaurants, different cuisines. One thing you have to realize is 2 weeks ago, we had a culinary program from Rabun County High School come in here, and I think there was 9 kids in the class. We kind of split them in 2 groups. Half of them learned how to shuck oysters, and the other half made pizzas, and then we kind of flip-flop. But one thing that I think even when I was in culinary school, we don't really realize to be in this business, it's hard work. I mean, a lot of jobs are hard work, obviously, to get where you want to be, but it's demanding. You're on your feet 12 hours a day. The aspects of understanding the day-to-day operations of a restaurant and starting, like I mentioned earlier, on the bottom as a dishwasher, you got to realize what it takes to be a dishwasher. You got to realize what my dishwasher goes through now on a daily basis back there. You have to tap into the work ethic of a server, of a hostess, of getting to realize the cost of food. You know, restaurants, I mean, they have one thing they teach you like throughout the years. I mean, our profit margin is 5 to 7%. And if a tariff on a produce goes up, I mean, it affects our bottom line. I mean, we can't try not to change our menus daily, but we do change them seasonally. And it's like just like the day-to-day aspect of the price of beef that went crazy out of the roof, you know, last year. The COVID aspect of things. There's a lot of things that affect the restaurant industry. And you kind of just through the experience learn how to cope with that, learn how to deal with ordering a different produce item that might be a little cheaper than the one you were used to using that went up 50% in cost. So a lot of that, I think, is just experience in the industry, working together as a team, learning how to highlight different vegetables, different meats, different produce, different seafood, and making it worthwhile for the customer to actually come visit you.
Do you have a best memory, favorite story, anything like that from your location? You've been open here, this location, how long now?
Almost 2 years.
Okay.
Well, my best memory is when John Bell stepped through the door.
How long ago was that?
Probably about a year ago.
Okay.
I mean, a couple farmers I deal with gave me a heads up that they were bringing them.
So you did have a heads up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So him and his wife came in. But he's been in a couple of times to get to-go orders. But I'd say one of the funniest stories I like to tell people is being in the farm-to-table industry, heirloom vegetables. So there's this one place I worked at. I was buying local squash, summer squash. Summer squash comes in all kinds of colors, sizes, different textures. So one of my servers came back. We had sauteed squash with onions on the menu. One of my servers came back and said, "This guy says this isn't squash on his plate." So I went out there to talk to him. I brought a couple different of the heirloom varieties that I bought locally at some of the local farms. He was like, I mean, he was probably a little intoxicated, I'd say, but he said, this ain't no effing squash. And I was like, sir, squash comes in all kinds of different sizes, flavors, and colors. And I kind of like had an educational moment, which, you know, he probably wasn't into listening at the time, but that's probably one of the stories I tell my cooks a lot. And they actually bring that up every now and then during the summer when we have a local squash on the menu, because several of my cooks have worked for me in the past. So that's always a good story.
So a question I like to do before the end of every episode is called the lightning round, which is a question that has nothing to do with anything. But I have just discovered they are doing sequels from a lot of the favorite movies that we got to be relatively close in age, because I was working when you were talking about working, and it's like my first job was a restaurant doing bussing tables. I have figured out some of my childhood dreams are coming true in that Tom Cruise did the remake of Maverick, or the sequel to Top Gun. I just saw that they're doing a sequel to Goonies. Have you seen that?
No, sir.
I might be more excited about Goonies 2 than I was Maverick. And I was very excited about Maverick. It looks amazing. It's supposed to come out, I don't know, sometime later this year. Do you have a favorite movie or anything from your growing up days that has either a sequel has been done or you would like the sequel to be done?
I think one of my favorite movies growing up was The Money Pit with Tom Hanks. I watched that over and over again and laughed over and over again.
Gosh.
But, I mean, I can't remember if that was before Big or after Big. There's this one scene in there where he, falls to the floor and he's looking at carpet and he's, finds some cards and he can't move and just throwing some cards around. And, that whole movie just from, being a homeowner now and knowing what all, kind of encounter through various homes you own and rent through the years, that movie's always kind of stayed with me and kind of hilarious.
That movie is I probably haven't seen that in 10, 15 years maybe. It is hysterical. All right, good one. I mean, he's not doing anything. He can make another one.
Yeah, maybe he has a house for his grandkids.
Yeah, as they do that but make it like the retirement home or something like that, senior living.
Yeah.
All right. So how do people find you just in general? Because your menu will change some seasonally. How do people get in touch with you in terms of special events? Do you do any catering? Just anything in terms of how people connect with you?
Mainly through Facebook and our website. I make daily posts on Facebook, kind of going through our specials, especially for the weekend. It'll tell you what kind of fish we're coming in. But you can follow us at Holden Oversoul Kitchen and Oyster Bar on Facebook. Recently started kind of getting back into Instagram over the past month or two, so you can follow us on Instagram at Holden Oversoul KOB. Our website contains all our various menus, as our pizza menu, quarterly menus change on there, as all our special menus on there. It's HoldenOversoulFarm.com. Currently, we don't do any caterings. We're pretty busy at the restaurant. We do offer caterings if you want to rent out our patio or rent out our front dining room or the whole restaurant. We actually had a party in here 2 weeks ago for a 40th birthday party that rented out the patio. We've done bridal showers, just any kind of special event you'd like to get a hold of us. And then we can kind of price it out for you and kind of do a special menu just for you. Reservation-wise, we only take reservations 6 or more. So I'd highly encourage you, if you're coming to visit us on a Friday or Saturday, to call ahead probably 30, 45 minutes before you come to be added to our wait list. We may not have a table available for you right then, but if you're already a 45-minute ahead jump on the wait list, we should be seated shortly. As we continue to grow here, we're very limited space. We have about 70 seats, and we usually incorporate a wait list on Friday and Saturday.
I know you got things to do in the kitchen and just in general around here. Really appreciate your time and just being a farm to table. I love that we have farm to table options in North Georgia. I love that we're getting more of them, and I love good food. So it's Jake wins. I'll let you get back to it, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for coming.